Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Ashland Planning Board meeting of Thursday, September 26th. I will call the meeting to order at 7:23. First on our agenda is the clerk's report. Kate?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had one email communication to the planning board since the last meeting, and that was responded to by the town planner.
All right, great.
Just to report, that issue was taken care of.
All right, great, thank you. Second thing on the agenda is public comment. There's no one online. Mark, do you have public comment?
Here I am. Good evening, Mark Sony, 119 Main Street, Ashland, Mass. I got an email notice about the town meeting. I'm just wondering if there's anything on the agenda that's got to be in the book for the town meeting itself.
I think we plan to have MBTA zoning bylaw at the town meeting, Mark.
Okay. And I asked it before you guys came on. The zoning is all complete and all set up for that MBTA to be in front of the town meeting?
We are working our tail off to make sure that it's complete, and it will be in front of town meeting.
Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next on our agenda are the two modification letters. I think everyone should have received them. These are the two modification letters, memos, whatever you want to call them.
Can I speak to them?
Yeah, for 100 Chestnut Street, so I will let Peter just review that.
So just as part of the packet, there's two modification letters. One was for the irrigation, which was condition number 22. Planning board member Kate Jerzik did submit some comments. It is in your packet. I printed it out. It's kind of with the track changes on it. It should be in there. Yep, right there. So that is in here. The original is in here too, just for comparison. I'm happy to bring both up on screen. And then there were no changes submitted for the modification approval. I do want to make a note. Kate did make a note that who made the motion and who seconded the motion, those were corrected. In both cases, Anna made the motions. In one instance, I believe Marcelo moved the motion for the facade, actually for the irrigation, and then Tricia moved the motion for the facade.
Yeah, but I withdrew my motion and
You
then Anna took
seconded
it.
Anna's motion.
Yes, correct.
You did withdraw your motion?
Yeah.
Yep, no, I just double checked that today.
All right.
And I just want to make sure, so both should read correctly on the voting. The only change was with the special condition 22 on the irrigation from Kate Jerzik.
Sorry, if we just take the first one first. The first one is for the elevation changes, elevation modifications. So the voting on that one has already been corrected, right?
Correct, that one's already corrected, yep.
Did anyone have any modifications to that? Deepa, did you?
I was absent on that, so I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
My name is on all these letters, so I'm not sure if you're gonna edit them.
Your name,
You're there as a,
but
As
you're
an
Absent. right.
Yeah, you were just absent.
Okay.
So,
I just put the A.
so A was absent, and A is absent,
Yeah.
and abstain is spelled out, to be clear.
Just to be
Right,
clear.
that's what you
yep.
did.
But the sheet next to that just has
Is
a
the
formatted,
That's just a signature
Okay.
block, so
Okay.
obviously you would not sign.
okay,
Okay, and we had already voted on it, so we were just
yeah.
seeing that if this represented what we said. Because our votes are already there. We voted on it before. So any changes, that would be ready to sign that one? Okay. And then the second one, so the second one is about irrigation. It's crossing out the town water, and so Kate, your change, let's see, is just the one in red at the bottom of the second kind of print?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want me to read that into
Where?
the record? It's-
Next
It's
section.
in next one, Marcelo, I'm sorry.
Oh, this one.
So, so as sent out to the planning board, it read, the last sentence of the page. The planning board found the applicant made a full faith effort to install a well on the site, but was unable to capture significant water supply for irrigation purposes and vegetation survival. With the comment from Kate, the sentence will now read the following. The planning board understood the information the applicant presented concerning the efforts to install a well on the site. That was unable to capture significant water supply for irrigation purposes and vegetation survival.
The planning board understood the information the applicant presented concerning, okay, let me start again. The planning board understood the information the applicant presented concerning the efforts to install a well on the site. Is that needed?
It should be which. What, that was needed to
The
capture.
planning board understood.
I think the word understood is what throws me off a little bit, isn't it?
Should it be a that? The planning board understood that,
That the information
I think,
presented.
Kate's comment is meant to say, like, we understood the information that they gave us with, like,
Okay.
no.
But I think we understood that the information confirmed that they were not able to get enough water? Isn't that kind of missing another word to complete it?
Let me just, when I sent this in, so, on the 100 Chestnut irrigation well, I attached the markup. I did not think that it was the basis of vote that we, quote, found the applicant made full faith effort. We did not actually receive any documentation nor made any efforts to have an expert third-party review analysis of the situation documentation. For clarity, I'm not saying the applicant wasn't believable. It's just that for that kind of finding, such a draft is written, I would want some verification. So
Right.
that's it's, I don't think it meets the bar for me to say we found.
So are we still questioning this?
I think the wording just isn't quite right, like it's hard to understand. What about something like, oh, I might have just lost it, hold on. Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I didn't have mine on, sorry.
It sounds like, oh, okay. What about, from the applicant's presentation, the planning board understood efforts to install a well on the site was unable to capture sufficient water supply for irrigation purposes and vegetation. Is that,
At first, the way you said it, efforts were made.
efforts were made, okay. So it would be, from the applicant's presentation, is that what I said? From the, what? From the applicant's presentation, the planning board understood that, what efforts? Efforts to, okay, yeah.
Were made.
But it was unable to capture, there we go, how about that? So, from the applicant's presentation, the planning board understood that efforts were made to install a well on the site, but it was unable to capture sufficient water supply for irrigation purposes and vegetation survival. Does that fit with what you're? Is that,
Yeah, I might just repeat well in that second one, right, instead of it,
okay,
but it's super necessary, but maybe clear.
Do you want me to do it again, Peter?
So I have, that, from the applicant's presentation.
Yep.
The planning board. Excuse me. The planning board understood that the efforts to install a well on the site, but it was
Efforts were made.
oh, efforts were made.
Yeah,
Okay.
that efforts were made to install a well on the site,
But
but the well
the well, okay.
was unable to capture blah, blah, blah.
Is the applicant's an apostrophe S?
Yes. From the applicant's presentation, comma. Thank you. The planning board understood that efforts were made to install a well on the site, but the well was unable to capture sufficient water supply for irrigation purposes and vegetation survival. Good? All right. Okay. And the voting there is good with everybody?
My only comment on it is that it has approved 4-0 on top, but then 5-0 in the paragraph at the bottom.
That's my fault.
Oh, that's a good catch, yep. Is the other one,
You know what, I caught
The
that
other one's good.
on the
Okay.
printed one.
Okay.
Okay, we're all set.
so, and do you do, okay, that one was 4-0, because there was only 4 of us there, and we all voted yes. The other one should be, there was 4 of us,
3-0, that's like.
Yep.
3-0.
I
One,
corrected it after
right?
it was put in here.
Oh,
Yep.
so on your thing,
I'm
it's,
on mine, yeah, so I'm sorry, I printed, I didn't want to go back and print more.
but are both of them 3-0-1 on this? Did you catch both of them?
Oh, I gotta put 301.
Do we need the one?
Not, both 301.
One's for Kate only
Wait,
abstained.
No, so I meant both the top and the bottom.
Oh.
Yeah. So the first one is just, the first one's just 4-0.
Mhm.
And then the second one is 3-0-1 for yes, no, abstain. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry to make you print again.
No, it's okay.
No, the second one is
No, the second one is
4-0.
4-0.
Yeah, I think this was the one,
The very first one was 3-0-1.
Yes.
the first in the binder. But I think Tricia's talking about the order that we
Oh,
actually did it, yeah.
yeah, in the binder.
She has the right,
In the binder, the facade is first. And
Yeah.
the well is second.
Oh, I'm so confused. Okay. So on the elevations one, we'll use that way. On the elevations one, the vote would be 3-1.
No, 3-0-1.
3-0-1. Someone else do this.
Yep, I
yes,
got it.
no, abstain.
I got it all taken care of.
And then the irrigation one is
4-0.
4-0.
Okay.
I believe you guys. Okay, so those, how many copies are there of each of those? Just one?
There's just 3. One will go to the clerk, one will go to the applicant,
Okay.
and I'll keep one in the planning board office.
So you'll lay those out afterwards?
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so, so next on our agenda, because unless anyone has any comments on that, we'll be moving on. The next on our agenda is a review of the actual bylaw that reflects what we've been talking about. There are 2 copies of it in here. You might want to take them out and put them side by side, because the one with the green on the front is the current copy. So this went out, and I apologize because I hadn't really had a chance to really go through it. And when I went through it, I thought there was some things in there that we just didn't need, right? Yeah, the green is a little hard to read through that. But what the green is saying and making clear, and there's two areas of green if you turn the page. What the green is making clear is that when, that anything not described in here reverts to the underlying zoning, which is what we always intended. But in some cases, like 10 to 60 Main Street, there's two underlying zonings, right? There's industrial and ADDA. So it's trying to clarify that the underlying zoning that we intend is the ones out of section 8.1 of the Ashland bylaws, which are overlay districts and special districts. And so in the other one, when we're laying out the sub-districts, then we're really clear about that, right? The underlying zoning is rail transit district. The underlying zone is Ashland downtown district, not industrial, right? So that's what we wanted to clarify in there. I think that's the only change on the first page. Obviously, you can see I did my little formatting, so I think it's easier to read.
So on that, the green, so why wouldn't it be both underlying? I'm confused about that.
I'm sorry, why wouldn't
So-
it be?
Like, why wouldn't it be, like, on Main Street, it's commercial, and then it has an overlay of ADDA. So why do we only list one of them?
Because we want, I think, commercial, what is it under
So
Pleasant
10 to
Street?
6 Pleasant Street, it's industrial.
Yeah,
So the base zoning is
Yeah.
gonna be industrial for everything really within ADDA, right? So for Pleasant Street and 10 to 60 Main, base zoning is industrial. Then the other overlay district, right, is ADDA.
which
So-
is the mixed use.
Which is the mixed
and-
use. We're trying to
Which is what we
pull,
want to promote.
we're trying to pull from the mixed use, right? And not the base zoning, right? Because in ADDA, we have, principal, standards, the performance standards, how the buildings look.
The form-based
the
code
Form-based code.
is all in ADDA,
In
it's not in
ADDA.
industrial.
So,
No, I understand.
Oh.
So I guess I'm confused about this, because I'm simple-minded. It says sub-districts. I would assume you'd list. I thought it was just a list. So it's listing some of it, but not all of it. And so I'm on page 3 of 5, 4,
Yep.
where you say that there are 5 sub-districts.
Yep,
All of which are shown. The sub-districts are A, Memorial Drive, underlying zoning, rail transit. That stays.
yep,
B, underlying ADD, and I think it's A, which we maybe
oh, right.
should say, but I don't know if that's important. But then I don't understand why it doesn't say the base zoning.
Because we don't want
We don't
Because,
want them to
yeah,
refer to the base zoning.
We're saying which one will apply,
Yeah,
to tell
if
them.
you,
It's just still on definitions, so I guess that's,
because the page prior to that,
Definitions for sub-districts.
Okay. Okay, I don't understand why. it
We're
wouldn't list it.
directing them to the underlying zoning that we want them to under.
yeah, so we're trying
Right.
to direct them when they do it, when they submit a project, right?
Yeah.
If someone ever uses the MBTA zoning bylaw,
Yeah,
and they submit a project, right? We're saying you, from a performance standpoint, right? From a architectural standpoint, how you design your project, we want you to mimic the overlay district, right? Which would be for 10 to 60 Main and or Pleasant Street would be ADDA. So we're pushing people to ADDA and using those standards rather than saying go to the industrial zoning district where we really do not have any zoning standards besides setback and height.
right.
and
So
this is
so
just
it's
the end of the
also-
message. But the beginning of the message is on applicability, where we say what is the intent, the green part. right? And
Yeah.
then this basically follows
it just,
that.
so the green part in the front, when it points you to section 8, though, that's where all those overlay districts and special districts are in the bylaw. They're all under section 8.
So once you read this first, you have the rules of the game,
Okay.
and this is just describing.
Yeah, and I guess it's just because it's an overlay and underlaying, and that's confusing, and I understand why it's written that way. I don't know if there's a
In this
better way to
situation,
write
you're
it.
gonna have underlying, then you have two overlays.
No, I understand, yeah. But
Yeah.
you're referring to an overlay as an underlying, and I think that does get a little confusing, but. it
Yeah,
has to be-
underlying zoning overlay district.
Yeah,
It's like you don't,
I know.
Yeah,
Is there any
okay.
other words we can use? Like-
open for suggestions.
But that's a term of art in the document, right? An overlay district, that's how it's described in the bylaw.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
you
it
have to
is-
use
it is-
that.
It's used here, and most of this verbiage, which Peter put together, is from
It's from a
It-
sample
it's,
bylaw.
it's from a
Yeah.
sample bylaw given by the state, and if you go look at like
Yeah.
Westboro and Northboro, it's like everyone's kind of using
Yeah.
this sample language.
I mean, I think it's, the way that it's laid out is clear that it's saying the underlying, especially to Marcelo's point, like if you're following from the green, we're directly saying the underlying zoning that would apply in sub-district A is rail transit district.
Yep.
Like, so I think it flows in that way.
I think the question about whether,
Would it be a mess if we call that as an overlay district?
In our bylaws, they're called overlay and/or special districts. You know, in section 8 of the bylaws, it
Yeah.
actually points out as, they're actually special districts.
like Wildwood is a special district, it doesn't overlay anything. That is the underlying zoning in Wildwood, and I think rail transit as well.
Correct.
The other ones, Pond Street, downtown,
It's just Pond Street and downtown.
Yeah, Pond Street,
Those are
the two
overlay
sites, yeah.
districts,
those
And-
are overlay districts.
And we're pulling it right from the bylaw. So reading the bylaw, section 8, titled overlay and overlay and special district regulations.
So that's what she's asking. So can that Main Street be overlay district instead of underlying in page 2 or page 4, whatever that number is?
I think
So-
the reason you want to say underlying zoning is because when you see the green part here, we're saying
Yeah.
the underlines, what we want you to use of the two options.
Yeah, and it won't be in green, obviously,
Right.
but yeah, that's a title that's used, underlying zoning. And so it's trying to,
Say
Connect
which,
the two.
Connect the
in a
two.
world where there are
Be
two,
consistent.
yeah,
which underlying zoning provision do we want you to use? Like, this is obviously going to be a bylaw that isn't like meshing into existing bylaws, and that's something I see a lot, and it's hard to like do it perfectly, but I do think like the wording tracks in this instance that.
But that paragraph is talking about zoning, underlying zoning. This is talking about sub-districts, so I'm not sure if it's going to
The
be.
underlying zoning in the sub-district.
yeah.
True.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
those are two different things, right? If I'm understanding the confusion, like sub-districts is what MBTA zoning calls this. Like you can have a district or you can have sub-districts, right? So that's the proper terminology for these 5 parcels we've pulled out. Each of those 5 parcels have an underlying zoning. Some of it, for 2 of them, it's the same underlying zoning, though they are a different district, right? Like we have Pleasant Street and we have Main Street, right? So we have Pleasant Street and 10 to 60 Main. Those are 2 different districts, but they have the same underlying zoning.
So all this is doing is saying like from my understanding and my read of it is, and I think it's well done, is saying if you are using MBTA zoning, here are our 5 districts under the MBTA zoning provision, and here is the zoning, the underlying zoning in each of those sub-districts that we want you to comply with if you're using the MBTA zoning law. And I think that
Right.
tracks clearly.
And I think the thing about the districts is that, I was gonna say, I mean, the 2 downtown ones are the same, I think, in every other aspect. They're ADDA, but I think because they're separated, you have to call them a different district, right? Like, because different parcels, right, they're not contiguous. So this one has to be 5, this district has to be 5 acres, and this one has to be 5 acres. You can't say, oh, together they're 5 acres, right? That's why they're different districts, so, I think I have that correct, right?
No, you are 100, sorry, excuse me. Yes, you're 100% correct. Because they're different districts, they're not contiguous, you're separating them out. And so that's what we're doing. From a zoning standpoint, they are 100% similar in the terms of underlying relationship to ADDA and where they're gonna go from there.
So do we have on the map, because I'm reading the definition right above of sub-district, an area within the MCMOD. So do we have to call the whole, like everywhere that hits these sub-areas, and then we're isolating the sub-areas?
Yeah, I mean, the overlay district is all of them together. It's like the whole bylaw.
No, I'm talking about the map, because
Oh.
it's calling a sub-district an area within the big district. So
Yeah,
then-
I think what you're saying, the answer is yes.
Yes.
All of them are one
Are one,
Yeah.
overlay district.
correct. They're all one together.
Yeah,
And then
but
we're
they have
saying
different parts.
there are 5 different sub-districts within that one. So they're not contiguous. So therefore, together they are one, separate into 5 separate
And
sub-districts.
that's the map, I guess, makes that clear then.
Well, that they're gonna, in the zoning map,
Yeah.
it will be represented accordingly.
Yep.
With the same hatch or whatever
Yeah.
designation.
Correct, 100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we have that
This is why
map.
Massachusetts
Was it
is
sent, I
really
think it
clear
was it
regulations.
sent out?
Percent. I don't, you know what, I'll.
Simple to follow.
Super easy to execute. Framingham said on the.
No.
I can resend the map.
I thought, was the map, did you guys see the map?
I did not see
Was it
but,
sent? I mean, it's not in
In the
here.
email?
It's the map of, related to the bylaw.
I don't recall seeing it.
Maybe you can bring it up. So.
Yep.
It's similar to the maps you've been seeing, but, you know. So just to talk about something else while we're doing that, one of the things we debated a little bit about, you can weigh in here, is the name of the zoning district. You'll see in the first one, it's MCMFOD, and I'm just like, I thought that was a bit long.
What does that stand for?
MBH Communities Multifamily Overlay District. And at first I took out the MF completely, and it was just MCOD. And then I realized in the sample that the state gave, they used MCMOD. You know, and so I just decided to go with that for ease and clarity. Like, this is what it is, it's identifiable.
So do you need the F?
No.
Right, so I took out the F. That's
Yeah.
what I did.
That makes sense.
Okay. Still
Makes
5
sense to me,
letters, but, you know.
A little shorter.
And then the other thing, like I said, while we get to the map, on page 2, if you go through this line of definitions, there was just one of them, I think it was building coverage, that wasn't used in the bylaw. Again, these definitions are from the provided draft bylaws. And so, but age-restricted housing we do use, and that wasn't in there, so we added that in. Another thing we changed was, here, on the first version you got, it was called a residential dwelling unit, but we always just refer to it as a dwelling unit. The building code refers to a dwelling unit, so I just took off the residential, just to call it a dwelling unit. Seems pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
I have a question on the one that as of right. So as of right, development may proceed under the zoning in place at the time of application without the need for special permit variance, zoning amendment, or other discretionary zoning approval. So I realize that that's actually in the state statute, because I was looking it up. My concern is, we don't control if that's what it is, but like, so now, if a lot would need a variance by state law, is that overriding it, or is it just like unfortunately, a bad use of the term of art, and it really is a legal term? Right, so like and is there any way to correct that right? So if you
I
need a
don't
variance,
understand.
you go to the zoning board of appeals.
Right.
There's very tight conditions by state law.
Yeah, then it's not as of right at that point.
But by them saying it's as of right,
But
does that overwrite that? That's what I'm trying to find out.
I think it's the use. This is all about the use. So I think you have to look at it, I assume if we look at it in context,
But it's not-
uses permitted as of right. So the following uses are permitted as of right. It's not saying anything you want to do is permitted as of right. The uses are permitted as of right.
So if there was
But
something.
that's not what it says in the definition.
Right, but you have to
Right.
apply the definition to the sentence.
To what it's modified.
It's,
To what-
where's that, okay.
So you shouldn't have to
Following
ask a
definitions.
variance for your use, right? Because the use is as of right. Is-
Correct.
Okay.
And I would say that, in many towns, the zoning board of appeals are not even allowed to issue a use variance. In the town of Ashland, you cannot apply for a use variance. It's illegal. When the town adopted chapter 48, section 10 variances, towns have the option to either to take with it either the ability to issue use variances and/or dimensional variances. Town of Ashland, as many other towns do, only have the right to issue a dimensional variance. We do not issue, I have never issued a use variance within the 10 years of being a municipal planner.
So where's the part that says it's only for use? I guess I didn't see that.
Well, it's just under permitted uses number 5, where that's why that term is there. What does as of right mean? It means you can follow the use is as of right. It doesn't say I don't know, whatever else you might need a variance for.
Okay, so yeah, I guess.
So
I
that
feel like it's a
definition
little
just-
sketchy, but
That-
whatever.
That definition just, when you get to this point, if you have a doubt, you will revert to the definition, but it's relative to permitted uses.
But why couldn't you just say uses then and be clear? Because I think it leaves it open, but whatever, I can't rewrite, whatever.
Well, again, this is the state's.
I know, it's a
Temp-
sample, though. I mean, it didn't say you have to.
Yeah, I know, but I'm not sure I agree with your interpretation of that, so.
I read contracts when there's not clear things, that doesn't usually work to the town's advantage. So it's essentially not clear, but whatever, that's fine.
I mean, I think this is the whole point of 3A, is
Yeah,
removing any hurdle that the locality might put in place to allow multi-family houses. So like the by right or like as of right use is like that is the central
right.
thing. So I think not that I agree with like the everything that comes with it, but I think, to your point, like not every single variance that someone might need to build, I think is covered by, you have a right if you're using the zoning to make multifamily dwellings. Or if you're in District B or C, commercial use as allowed by the zoning. But that's the part that you wouldn't need the variance for, not like some other random
Right.
thing that is there that requires a variance, like a setback or something like that.
Yeah, like I agree 100%. And the term variances, I think it's thrown around a little bit too easily,
Yeah,
to tell you the truth. And I
that's what
think
I have
that-
heartburn about, but I can't fix
And
it.
I think they're
It's
few and
not-
far between, I think this comes from the state. Obviously, yes, they did throw it in, but applying section 10 of 48, what a variance is, I just think you're gonna have to accept what the state's definition is and move forward.
Because there are municipalities where you can apply for a use variance, right?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
there are
So
municipalities,
this is an umbrella definition that the state is using.
Correct.
That needs to work for every municipality that's enacting a bylaw, so.
correct, and
So
when
then
you
why
have a
couldn't
use,
the as of right say use that may proceed under the zoning instead of development, and then then it's clear.
can you repeat that again?
So in the definition as of right,
Yep,
if you said use that may proceed under the zoning in place at the time, that's exactly what you all are communicating. That is not what the definition says.
I'm okay with that. I mean,
This is the state's,
I mean, I didn't check to see if that exact definition is the exact one, like if a word got off, I didn't look at that.
Peter, if
No,
we,
it's pretty, I did, I mean,
You did.
I get it, I'm just saying that is a conflict, or not clear, I should say more.
have
maybe
they
than-
okayed our, whatever we,
we submitted to the AG's office, no, we have not heard back.
okay, so if like we changed that, could that torch them approving it in time for town meeting?
They don't
That's my
improve
only
it in
worry.
time for-
We
Yeah.
wouldn't even submit it.
Yeah.
I would just, you know,
Okay.
if we made that change, I would run it to council, Lisa, and I
Okay.
would see her take, you know, obviously her take on it, and she obviously as this has always evolved, you know, she's been kind of with us
Yeah,
step and step, you know, I mean, you know,
because
hand
there
in
are
hand.
other communities that have had that torch there.
Exactly,
back
and
there
if
by
something
law.
doesn't
AG
pass,
review.
you know, and to tell you the truth, when a AG's office, you know, when they do approve a bylaw or they disapprove a bylaw, or I don't want to speak for EOHLC, but from a AG's office perspective, they have passed, obviously, they have made changes to wording, verbiage, right? And they make the change, and so they approve it upon this new language. And so if they disapprove, they could just strike it and move it back to
To what it was.
development.
Okay.
And then you say you're approved with that.
And sorry, I don't mean like the typical AG review. I mean the review that's going on like for these in particular to make sure like the math works and stuff. I don't know if they're looking at all of this like little stuff.
No,
Okay,
No.
perfect.
And that's why it's taking, once hopefully we vote for this at town meeting, it's taking 4 to 6 months before you even find out if you're good.
Right.
Because
okay.
they're checking everything, so.
But that's the review process that happens after. There is a review that, because they looked at our spring one and said it was good.
Yeah, like the number crunching, I
Yeah,
think.
the number
okay.
crunching.
Yeah.
From
But
the
they're
number
not
crunching
looking at this
standpoint.
part. Got
Yeah,
it.
they're not looking at your whole bylaws.
Okay.
You know, that's a much longer process.
I just wanted to
Is my
make
understanding. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm okay with that, because I think, I mean, well, number one, Lisa will take a gander at it, and if she says, oh, no way, you know, then it goes back. If it's like, yeah, fine, then we'll send it to this, you know, we'll leave it as is, and if the state's like, nope, we don't like that word, we'll change it, and that is what it is. So. Is everyone good with that?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so here's here's kind of the big one. Use is permitted as of right, and this is highlighted in yellow. And this talks about use is permitted as of right. 1, dwelling multifamily, yes, that's the whole point. 2, this is about the sub-districts for mandatory mixed-use determination. But this doesn't really work with what we're doing, is what we've found out. Do you want to
Yeah, so I
explain
can
that?
kind of dig a little bit deeper into it. So obviously, we did apply, you know, as asked for the mixed use of areas, of Pond Street and along Main Street. Digging deeper, I have come to find that a mixed-use district, right, when it becomes mandatory mixed use, the units can count towards your total, but the state subtracts that land area from your total mass, right? And so with that said, to do the numbers appropriately, is that right now we have 56 acres altogether, including Pleasant Street and 10 to 60 Main Street. Of those is 14 of the 56 acres. We can apply, I think it's 281 units to our overall total, but therefore we have to subtract those 14 acres, right? And I'm still waiting for, I'll confirm this with the state, from our total, which is 56. That puts us under the needed 50 acres. So therefore, we're running into a little bit of a situation, right, gap. Because the mandatory mixed use is not a compliant sub-district, that's the terminology the state uses, is because of the commercial use. So they're saying because you have a commercial use, it's not solely 15 units per acre residential, therefore you cannot count the 14 units to that total.
Yeah, so here's this is from Section 3A, the fact sheet above mandatory mixed-use districts. Is a mandatory mixed-use district a 3A compliant district? No. A mandatory mixed-use district is not a 3A compliant district. Section 3A of the Massachusetts Zoning Act requires compliant districts to allow multifamily housing as of right. Mixed-use development does not qualify as multifamily housing because of the non-residential uses. So I think even in our bylaws, we have multifamily as a use and mixed use as a use, but they're not the same.
Now-
So the MBTA zoning is only multifamily.
Can we separate B and C and get there? Like, how many acres is B, is Pleasant, and how many acres is?
No, you can't.
The only way we could do it apparently is to take a little strip off, kind of, and zone the little strip for mixed use. But the thing is, I think, to me, the effort would be for appearances only, because the underlying zoning, as per 9 to 49, I mean, which is ADDC, I think,
Correct.
but you can already do mixed use in ADDA. In fact, it, encourages it, and you can do it as a higher density than is allowed by the MBTA. So you can do it anyway. We don't need this to mandate. They don't have to do it anyway. They can, if they want to do mixed use, they can do it under the underlying zoning. They don't need MBTA to do it.
Right, so the danger is the danger of everybody wants housing, so the only danger is having less say if it goes the MBTA, because it's by right.
Having less say.
Yeah, because it doesn't come, I mean, I'm sticking up for my colleagues in the planning board, I see how hard we work to make projects better, right? And so it won't have that process, because if they take the MBTA zoning, it's by right.
Meaning they could choose to have a mixed use because the underlying zoning is there, but that if they wanted to do 100% residential, they can.
By right, and then
Yes.
it's a
Yeah.
different
If
process.
we remove this.
Right.
Right.
So,
I'm not getting it, because they can do 100% multifamily by right in the underlying zoning as well.
And put commercial
Yeah.
to that.
right,
limit.
if they, I know.
And you can get a higher density, a higher yield.
Yeah, so what is it saying?
So if somebody wanted to, the simplest way is perhaps, I'm using the MBTA zoning by right. That is the whole reason the state made this, to make less restrictions. So if you take out the commercial, now those parcels that we would like to see commercial, we've said that in fact, they're starting out as commercial zones, and the overlay is mixed use, we would now be making them all residential.
We're allowing
It,
to be all.
we are making it a possibility to be all
But
residential.
you're just saying that possibility exists under the underlying zoning as well.
The underlying zoning, do you have your,
Yeah, it's right here. The underlying zoning allows that by right anyway, at a yield of 2.
So there's no change,
There's no change.
but the
It's just
density is
that-
different.
It's just that including
So-
this screws us on acreage.
Correct.
Sorry for,
Yeah,
so
no, you're 100% right.
Multifamily dwellings, it's
No, so
included by right.
including the mixed use.
For
and
C, it's a
applying
special
for the
permit
mandatory
because
mixed
those are
use,
supposed to be less dense, but
if we
ADD
s-
is.
If we lose those
is
acres,
the most dense, and you can do
you would.
Mixed.
Yes. It
disallowed.
brings
so
us,
in other words, this is our attempt to like guarantee ourselves some commercial on Pleasant Street in Maine, but it undercuts our acreage.
but it undercuts our acreage.
Right.
100%. However, when you look at Pleasant and Maine, you're in ADDA, and your yield under ADDA is going to be much higher using ADDA at a floor area ratio of 2, right? Now, Alvaro and I did the math today around 4 o'clock, right? And using a acre lot, right, with 15 units per acre, each I think it was each unit had a area of 1,500 square feet. You had a yield of a FAR of 1, right? And so with this all said and done, you're still going to have a higher yield of a unit count using ADDA, right? And just to clarify, anybody using MBTA zoning still has to go through design review, still has to go through site plan review, right? We are not giving up anything within those two, right? We still have to go through those review processes for stormwater, for ingress, for egress, for fire department safety. Those items are always still there, right? And so any developer is going to have to meet from a health, life, and safety standpoint, access in and out of site, but then also they have to meet the stormwater requirements of the state currently, right? And so I don't think we're giving up anything, but to meet the qualifications and to compliance, you know, the mandatory mixed use does create a situation because it drops us down below. Now, this was just learned, obviously, coming through, and I'm gonna follow up to confirm, but there is a situation. But if you retract the mixed use, retract those mixed use, we can plug along with the bylaw that we have. Knowing that anybody that's gonna redevelop in that area using ADDA is gonna get a higher yield, and obviously residential mixed, all residential developments allowed by right.
And for none of the public forums did we ever talk about mixed use. We always just presented it as housing because that's the sure thing, right? That has to be there in those 50, at least 50 acres, right? So we never talked about the mixed use. I'm sure people would be great with mixed use. I'm not opposed to that, but it's already, we did talk about it being already in the underlying zoning.
I think
Yeah.
if it keeps things as it is anyway, like if this was just sort of like an attempt to have something be even better, but it could be all apartments anyway, like my personal stance is that it's not worth losing the acreage.
I don't think we in a way, we can't lose the acreage. I mean, we can't get below 50. We can lose the 6 by maybe, kind of like I said, taking a strip near the street, because that's where mixed use would be, and calling that strip mixed use, and then having the area behind it residential, but it starts to get really messy really quick.
Seems like a futile exercise.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, is it just, like, what are we gaining when someone could just take the underlying zone,
Yeah.
instead of splitting their site, they would just take the underlying zoning and do mixed use, if they wanted, or all residential, if they wanted.
So if I'm a
Right.
developer, what is the incentive for me to take the MBTA? It's just additional density?
No,
Not in the way we're doing it.
not in the way.
yeah.
'cause it's-
So if I was just looking at my yield,
Yep,
I would be better off going with the underlying
with ADDA.
district anyways, which is already enacted.
Well, because you can remember 9 to 49, which we just went through,
Yeah,
is 0.91 acres.
yeah, it's like 29.
There's 29 units on it,
Yeah.
plus commercial space.
Yeah, exactly. So they did it. They're
Right.
using that.
So.
They did it. And if you look at,
And that FAR is only No, maybe I think the FAR was about 0.92. It was, and this FAR it's 2. It's double
I
what
mean,
it is.
This is kind of ripe for zoning changes, because I think that's not what people wanted, that's not what our zoning says, it says mixed use. And I mean, I just have heartburn over it, because you kind of zone for what you want, right? And then we're saying all residential, so it's probably can't change at this point, but I would like to see that whole thing revisited, because if we have some massive by right housing, I haven't heard people say they don't want housing. What I've heard people say is they don't want giant apartment buildings. They'd like to keep a character of the town. That sort of isn't,
Totally
so-
agree, but what I'm saying is that that's a part of our underlying zoning.
It's already.
Oh,
there.
no, I
It's-
understand.
We
I'm just
already
saying,
approved
but we're
it.
the
Yeah.
planning board. We can offer
Yeah.
suggestions about
Yeah, but-
revisiting
but-
these.
Yeah, so we should revisit, and that
We
we,
we could, but that's a double-edged sword too, as we have seen. Because, yeah, you can have your cake and eat it just so long, because people, if you say people don't want too much housing, then you get 40Bs.
And
Oh,
pushing
no,
the
I
needle
think-
here is not worth it to like blow up.
Because you don't have enough housing,
the
enough affordable
calculation,
housing.
yeah.
So you cannot want it until you get it.
well, this is the thing, I totally agree with the mixed use. That's why we pursued 10 to 60 the way we did for so long and tried to get it right? We agree with that. This just isn't about that, nor is it, nor are we making it appealing to do that. Could someone still do it? Yes, but they can do it anyway, like without this zoning.
But, and like I said, because it didn't go through for whatever reason, now we're dealing with a 40B in that
frankly, if-
specific location.
Yeah, and frankly, if we do 15 units an acre, that's a lot less than they can do if they use the underlying zoning, so.
Yeah, and
I
we
think-
did those calculations.
There's no change, really.
And from design point of view, I think a developer would really lose value to a property by not creating that commercial aspect for a multifamily housing. I think by default, yes, the scale of the commercial space may vary, but I don't think any of the developers would do that by creating, especially like Main Street, where you're right off the busy street. You would not want to have residential units on that level anyway, so,
I think the
It'd
same is true for Pleasant, arguably, like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pleasant has a little bit of kind of still that depth to that street is a little more wider, but I think Main Street is too busy and has a lot more walkability. It will not be a great unit to be on level 1. It won't give you that privacy to that unit, and it'll be hard for him to sell, so
I
hopefully.
think the same, I think Pleasant, no one, if this is like multifamily and you're thinking about like you want families with no age restrictions, things like that, no occupancy, no one wants their door opening out to a train track.
Yeah, true.
So there's already kind of built-in
Built-in
incentive to put
incentive,
that coffee shop on the bottom floor, right, or whatever. So, yeah, so anyway, that's where we are with that. So, so our suggestion would be to just take out that yellow section and do what we have been presenting through the forums, which is just talking about multifamily. And obviously, when we get through, well, don't even have to get through comprehensive plan, but start to look at these zones and see what we want to do differently, right? These bylaws were made, I don't know when, before our time.
Yeah, and just to add to that point, I think, and I think what to Kate's point is, if the town wanted to drop that FAR from 2 to 1.5, I think that would be a conversation to have, right?
Yeah, be easy.
That would be a good conversation to have. And I think that could be spurred on from this, obviously, compliance of the MBTA. And I think obviously that's what we're all striving for, is compliance.
The funny thing is, somewhere in the MBTA zoning, an FAR of 2.5 was considered low. Like, that was the lowest category, 2.5 and below. Yeah, it's nothing, right? It's nothing, yeah. So anyway, it was just kind of funny when I saw that.
In a subway district,
Yeah.
you had to be 2.5. And that makes sense. But here where we are, so.
Okay, so the next yellow section, obviously prohibited uses, the ones in yellow, because it got added at the last minute, and is different than what you received, but we should have something about, it is prohibitive to have, limits on the size of the units, the number of bedrooms, the size of the bedrooms, or the number of occupants. That's from the NBT. What's that? Yeah, that's the exact,
Yeah,
Fro-
it's,
where we would like to have control, taking it away.
it's to not, have something in there that,
can prevent you
Can
from doing
prevent
family
families.
housing, yeah.
Or you can do whatever, 500 studios,
You can,
whatever.
we just can't
Yeah.
say it has to be studios and one bedrooms. We can't limit the number of 3 bedrooms and.
right,
Yeah,
Yeah,
the mix.
yeah.
exactly.
Okay, dimensional requirements, there's a few things on here I don't, okay. Am I looking at the wrong one? Hold on a minute. No, sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. I was looking at the old one. On the dimensional requirements, those are just highlighted from the old one because I have way too many copies of this thing. I think on your original one, that first 25 was a 20.
Yep.
Correct.
But when we went back and looked at the zoning, it's a 25-foot setback. So Alvaro tried that in the model to make sure it works out fine, it doesn't change our units. So we put it back at 25, again, just so we're just trying to stay with the underlying zoning.
That's a good deal, the scale.
Yeah, we're trying not to change anything in here. We're trying to just use the underlying zoning. The same thing with the two numbers below that, 15 and 15, because that other language comes from the downtown now, where sometimes you have a lot with, it's a party wall on each side, right, in downtown. And so you don't really want to require a setback if someone rebuilds there. So now you have this weird setback instead of having just buildings with party walls that are currently existing, right? So that's what that is. So anyway, but in these districts, if we think about Pleasant Street and we think about 10 to 60 Main, we don't need a 0 side setback. That makes no sense. There are no common walls. There's no party walls that exist. So that's why we just put it at 15 and took out the 0, because that's a little strange. The other part of this, which is something I'd have to have Alvaro check, is the minimum front yard, 8 feet. In the bylaws, that's 8 feet for mixed use, which is why we had it at 8 feet here, and it's 15 feet for residential. So that's something I would want to change back to 15 if the model can accommodate it.
And I can speak to that. I don't think the model will have an issue with that.
Okay,
Yeah.
different things you've tried over the,
With the different
Okay.
things we've tried, I think that's a minimal change, and I don't think we'll have a kickback.
okay, so that hopefully will go to 15 or as close as we can get it, to 15 to maintain a residential setback of 15. That's what it is for all residential in our bylaw. So, the other things come out of, that should look familiar to you, like the 38 feet. We talked about that a lot with 10 to 60 Main Street. For the 4 stories on D and E, they are 4 stories. That's Chestnut Street and 501 Pond Street.
Correct.
And so those were 4 stories, but we didn't really have a maximum feet amount, so we made it,
We looked at the construction drawings.
and then made it, the relative amount, I forget what that was, like, if you take 38 divided by 3, you get like 11 point something, then we took that number and times it by 4. And so, remember, these are 4 stories, but also might give room for a roof, right, a gabled roof or something above those 4 stories. So, I was going to say something else having to do with what I saw in the state requirements, but I can't remember what it was. But anyway, so it made, kind of logical sense, I guess. And it also, we went back and looked at those projects, 100 Chestnut Street and 501 Pond Street, and generally they have a line about, hey, our roof height is like 47 or 48 feet, but that's showing it at the most typical roof line, and then there's stuff above it, you know, but those areas don't really have a height restriction. So we're kind of putting one on. Common open land, we put in there, I don't remember where that was from. I think it was kind of from our bylaws and not necessarily,
Question on that.
oh, which one?
That one, that was, so it says we encourage, but encourage doesn't really work, we've seen, like, can we ask, can we require this? Because I feel like, so, if we're giving residents and there's zero place for kids to play or anything, it's like, it doesn't make any sense.
I think,
And that would be the big, like, people, they gave dog park, nobody gave a place for kids to play at various developments, unfortunately.
right, but I think with this, you have to, in the spreadsheet, you have to allow for enough space to actually construct what you're saying you're going to construct at the density you're allowing. So you would have to give
Pull the acreage back.
you would have to say how much space are you giving, you know, you'd have to be, I think, more specific about it. So,
But I thought all those calculations already had leave-outs for stuff, right?
well, I'm not the one doing, I'm not sure. I know they
When you
have,
build, you mean when you're building the model, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're building the model up, and you know, Alvaro is the one that's been doing all the GIS work and building the model up, but when you do build the model up, it is looking for these very specific things, right? This is language, but we've seen it, I've seen it in a couple different, I've seen it here and reviewing other things. I think the word encourage is strong enough that, and obviously, the other thing is, I think when someone builds these developments, you know, they're gonna wanna make these appealing for rent, right? And so nobody's gonna make an unappealing, obviously, development. And so I think having encouraging for open space, I believe is strong enough. How it affects, I think you do have to build into the model, 5%, 10%, what is that number? I think, I can't say we'll look into it because of where we are in the creation of this bylaw and in the model, but we're staying consistent with the state and in other communities.
I know, encourage doesn't mean anything, though. I mean, there's no teeth to it, so it's like, it's nice words, but you have no way to get it.
yeah, well, you just have to remember that all these sites are, everything we've set is either the lowest density we can, or stuff's already built there. So, I'm not saying that the statement isn't important or valid. I'm just saying it's not really a worry, like, at this point. Like I said, either the units are set so low that it'd be really strange for someone to take that path, or there's already something built on the site, right? Those are our districts. That's what we've chosen. That was the thing the whole time, right? To control, to not let this process affect development, really, that our development will be affected by another process, the comprehensive plan.
It's really just B and C that are question marks. I mean, could
Yeah,
we
100%.
say the developer should have common open land, because should is a little stronger than encourage, but isn't shall?
I think for B and C,
Says the lawyer.
no, I think for B and C, you already have height limitations. Now you're increasing the side setbacks as well. You need to remember that these have to be viable from design point of view. Otherwise, you're going to have no progress with these properties, and you're going to see what you're going to see. In order to kind of create these boundaries, we are losing out on what future prospects the town is opening up to. So I think you already have increased the setbacks here. Your side setbacks are increased here. the percentage of openness is already kind of built into your setbacks. So I don't know if that's really a realistic ask.
I just don't see how we can start to define that so specifically when everything that we're doing is trying to direct people down to the underlying zoning.
I agree.
You know, we're not trying to set up things here, we're trying to direct them down to the underlying zoning. And then later on, we should work to change that underlying zoning, so it's more of what we want. Like Wildwood, I think some of these areas do have, you know, they encourage it there, right? And that's why we're directing them down to what was already written and established. Then the parking, again, the yellow part would come out because even for mixed use, you can't have a minimal, you can't say there's any parking.
You can't require parking.
You can't require
You can't
parking
require parking for mixed use at all.
for mixed use space. And we're taking that out, so. The other thing is about the, like, what do we want to establish for parking? Right now, in our model, we have 1 parking space for a studio or 1 bedroom, and 1.5 parking spaces for 2 bedrooms or more. That is the requirement that's out of Pond Street. In the, and I do have maybe one question about this. In ADD, they start out the underlying zoning, I mean, we're spelling this out, but in the underlying zoning, it starts out as 2 spaces per unit, but immediately goes, if you're in ADD, immediately goes down to 75% of that. And then if it's mixed use, it goes down another 75% of that. So that's the one thing I wasn't sure about here, and it might be a question for Lisa, that what wording do we put in if we want this to say, this is our zoning, it doesn't get, if we want, it doesn't get decreased in ADDA. Now, the state would love you to, the state really would like you to say, to put in maximums, instead of saying a minimum of 1.5 parking spaces per unit, they want you to say a maximum of 1.5 parking spaces per unit. Like that's the wording they encourage, right? So to try to not build so much parking, right? More open space, encourage more bike riding, more common open space, right? That's what they're trying to minimize parking. A lot of this, obviously, both Cirrus, 160, and Pleasant Street are all in nearby the train station. So I don't know. My question is just a question, where do we want to set that number? I believe Alvaro said that 2 still works if we change that 1.5 to 2. But do we want it at 2?
Well, it would be kind of inconsistent, I mean, if in Pond Street, and I remember the discussion, because of course there's a point where, I mean, people need cars to go do their groceries, and there's a point where you cannot develop a project that doesn't have enough parking, people will not get those units.
Right. And
If it worked there, it would be kind of inconsistent to have more here, isn't it? Or maybe not, but.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think the difference, there's nowhere else to go on Pleasant or Main, like you can't, there's no, right, like what was, so if you're talking about 2 bedrooms, my first thought was 2 spaces for a 2-bedroom, right? Cause if you're thinking the purpose of this, like, you want, they're trying to encourage affordable housing for families. I don't know what you do with 1.5 parking spaces when that contemplates having a second car for 2 bedrooms and above. When there's inevitably not enough spots, where does someone go on Main Street? There's no,
They have to go by somewhere else.
right, and there isn't, I mean,
I would, I know parking, major developers park at, that build about 1.3 parking spots per unit.
oh, I'm sorry, where was that?
I think on average, talking to
Oh.
developers, across the metro Boston, you're building at 1.3 parking spots per, right? I think in Ashland, and I know we had this conversation with 100 Chestnut Street, they were building their parking lot with a mixed-use development, 174 units, 10,000 square feet of commercial, they had a parking area ratio of 1.5 spaces per unit, right? And this, I'm going off of memory, so if my numbers are give and take a little bit, but they feel confident that they have enough. And speaking with them, they believe they overdeveloped the parking area for what the demand will be for traffic. I also believe strongly that no developer is gonna build a project that they don't believe they don't have enough sufficient parking to rent those apartments out, right? And so I think this fits the bill, what we have. We've kind of we stole it from Pond Street overlay.
Yeah, it's been tested.
It's been tested.
I-
And it meets the model, and the model works out with this parking ratio.
I thought I asked, I think 100 Chestnut Street might be 2, but with no additional spaces for commercial. Like, they're all
2 or
shared.
2 bedrooms and above.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or 2 spaces per unit. Because I thought it was 174 units times 2. I thought that's what he and I determined. But with no extra spaces for the commercial, that they have, it's all shared. Right, shared parking. So, but I do think Peter's right, and they thought that they had more spaces than they were gonna need, at 2. I remember that discussion. So,
I would recommend that we stay with that, since it's been tested in other areas of town, it's been proven, and then we don't incentivize the public to do more.
with 1.5.
I think so.
I mean,
At least that's not a guess.
yeah, I mean,
Used.
and I would just say then that we should look at how do we put a note in to make sure if we want this, that the parking isn't reduced by the 75%.
But wouldn't you be mixing, I mean, I thought the whole point of this was to try to make this as an overlay clear.
Right, but in the model, you have to put in the parking, right? So you have to put in the parking to make sure you have enough room for the units.
Yeah.
So to have some things mess with that's why all the dimensions and stuff are listed. You can't have things in the underlying zoning that mess with the ability to build the units, right? So that's one of the things that he showed me where he has to put in how many units of parking. And I guess you could put in, less, right? Or, but.
But I thought you were saying, so I know that you can have that parking reduction, but that's not this zoning. So why do we have to say you can't reduce? I don't understand.
I'm not sure.
It all comes into the model.
Okay, but I'm just simply
Yeah, no,
seeing words. I don't.
Yeah, no, you're.
Nobody cares about the model as long as it's used correctly.
I assume you're asking, why do I need to put in language that says, no, you need to
Yeah.
use 1.5, don't reduce it?
Yeah.
And that's a question I have, like, I don't know, it's like, okay, it's in here, and we were pretty specific about it, that it does say, all the provisions of the overlay district, unless otherwise specifically noted in section 8.9, which is this whole thing. So, it seems to make sense that we wouldn't need it. It's just something I would like to ask Lisa, like, what are we saying here? That,
I think
that's all.
then it's more things probably have to be spelled out, not just the parking, though. That's the problem. Then we have to go look at. You're saying they can't take the reduction of ADDA.
Right.
If they're using if they're using this bylaw, right? No, they're not gonna use it.
Right, then this is the parking if you're
That's the
using one.
parking.
But for
Yeah.
everything else,
But for
You
the
go down.
performance standards and the design of the building, we want them to take from
Oh,
the
I understand,
special
because that's
overlay
wrapped
district.
up in that whole
Correct.
thing. So you probably do have to mention, but there might be other things too, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
but-
problem.
It's interesting because then for consistency with what we discussed before, would this be also a way to incentivize people to go to the underlying
It would.
district?
From a park,
Yeah,
from a parking standpoint,
because you'd
yes.
have, you wouldn't have to provide as much parking. Yeah.
Yeah.
We said 1 and 2, and 2 in the model works, is that another incentive to push them down to not use the facility to
Oh,
use the other? Is that what you're saying?
But, no, I was not talking about parking.
Yeah.
Parking, I was just saying, it's been tested,
The one-
would be guessing, I don't know.
1.5 is tested, it works. Just for the forward point of this conversation, we have at 100 Chestnut Street, there's 174 units, and we have 300, we're gonna have 357 parking spaces. That's 2.04 parking spaces per unit. Two,
Oh, it's not 1.5.
that's not 1.5. The
Pond
six-
Street is 1.5. It's
Correct.
Because
But we
that's
don't
the
have
zoning.
parkings, but the require, we did issue a special permit, right? For parking, because right now, their commercial space would require 58 parkings total. So we did give them a waiver for parking, but if we're looking at a specific unit to parking ratio from the approved plans, you know, and saying for overnight parking, when the businesses are closed, you have 2 parking spots per unit, right? Now, obviously, not everyone's gonna be parking there, you know, especially in front of the buildings all night long, right? And you're also never gonna, for out of the 174 units, each occupant probably won't have 2 cars, right? So there's gonna be that flex of mixed-use space, people parking. So from that standpoint, that's where they kind of said, we believe we built enough parking. And so I think that's where it comes back to the point is, no developer's not gonna build enough parking, because parking comes down to how you rent your building. And I think also in the downtown, we have a lot of assets, right? It's walkable. You know, we just did a huge downtown project. It's connected to the train station. And so if there was an area in town where there was, and it made sense to decrease the parking, it is in these 2 parcels in ADDA that we have done in the past and that the bylaw has historically allowed.
So, we can come back to it if anyone has any,
It
hesitations
looks
about
like
that.
you struck out, because it was clear the ads here, but possibly, any required takings for right-of-way improvements, including sidewalks, or it got moved somewhere maybe? It was under common open land.
Yeah, I mean, those things, I think came out of, these things. I don't think these were a part, I think those, do you know where these came from? I don't think these were a part of the sample text.
I'm sorry, I can't, I would have to. You know,
Let's see what it was.
I think you got me on that one.
I don't know if we meant to take.
Yeah,
I
here,
mean,
no,
if, like,
where is that? Yeah, see, that's common open land. So the common open land and the required right-of-way taking is actually came from the Pond Street
That came-
overlay district.
Yeah.
And so when I read through that, I'm like,
we probably don't.
I don't think
No,
we
I
need
just-
this.
I'm just
Yeah,
asking,
no,
'cause-
Yeah.
no, because it's missing.
I know, if we mark up, can we just, it's so much easier to do, like, strike through and leave it, because, like,
I
I
just
did
find-
spend time editing.
I know, I just find it really hard to read, after,
I know, but it's just,
I know, just difference,
Now-
just difference of opinion, right? That's why I provided the that I wanted the one that you were sent and also the one with kind of more editing, so you
Yeah.
could go back
I'm
and
sorry,
forth.
Kate, we just kind of was non-applicable.
Yeah, and
And so presumably that next one, no storage or permanent displays of goods, blah, blah, is the same
it's from
thing.
Pond Street, right?
And we don't need it. That's fine. I
It
just,
it sounded
didn't really
odd
make
to me.
sense to me
Yeah,
anyway, but
okay,
I
good,
just-
yeah. Yeah, now the renewable energy installation, that is from the state. And it seems like, at least from the sample ones I've looked at from other towns, it seems like everyone's putting it in, I assume because the state's also trying to promote solar. So it,
I don't think I found that table. I went to 8.9.7. Is that?
that's this right here.
Oh, so this is the new one. And is it labeled 8.9.7 though?
Yeah, says it's dimensional requirements.
Okay, so it's okay.
Yeah, so 8.9 is, I think what we're thinking the whole bylaw will be,
Correct.
and then
Okay.
7 is dimensional requirements.
Yeah, that's the overall bylaw,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah,
Okay,
and as you recall, renewable energy installation is
Okay.
allowed by right under the Dover Act in the state,
yep.
so that has to be allowed.
I was just looking for the table. I thought it was referencing our current zoning. And I
No,
was
no,
try-
no,
I'm
I'm
like, I don't think
sorry.
we have that table, so,
Yeah.
okay.
We don't have an 8.9 yet,
It's just the one above.
so. And then all of the affordability, I don't know where that text is. Is that from the state things or from other things we have used?
Nope, that's from, Lisa filled that in, sorry. That is boilerplate affordable housing stuff. We did put in the 12.5%, which is the Pond Street, which came through the study that we did, the economic analysis study we did in the spring.
Yeah, I think you guys got that backwards from the study. On the economic study. So I believe Pond Street had to stay at 10 because it's over the 4 stories that's allowed. So if we should look at lowering it to 3 stories, so, because we want more affordable, I believe. So I think that's completely reversed. That,
Is Pond Street's over 4 stories?
It's 4 stories.
It
Pond
is?
Street's
right.
4
And so
stories.
I probably remember, because I asked the question, I lived near there, and I said, well, why can't we say up to 3 stories, you can make it economically viable at 12.5%, we paid an economist. And they said, you can't, because the 4 stories is a different type of construction that's more expensive. So I looked it up today on those slides too, I believe that's 100% reversed.
Okay.
Okay, so,
I'll double check, we can double check that if,
so the 12.5% might be applicable to,
Everything but Pond Street.
okay.
I also thought too, only one district qualified from, okay, yeah. so-
No, I mean, from that report, it was everything but pond. Now, I mean, maybe we have to relook the details, but.
I remember being disappointed that we couldn't get more than 12.5, but yeah, that's an important point. I understood it this way, but
I'm happy to
Yeah.
double
No, I
check.
looked at the slides at lunch too, to make sure.
okay.
so-
Yeah, no, I'm not saying you're not wrong. I just remember being disappointed that only 12.5% versus something more substantial, right? So no, that'd be great. That would be
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, well, I can double check that, that's not a problem. Then the rest is boilerplate.
Um,
And then section 9, site plan approval, review. And then the applicability would be section 4.9, 4.6, that's site plan review and design review. And then the findings here come from the state, from the decision in final permit granting authority, which would be the planning board. Those are different right now from our site plan review findings, because it was found by the Attorney General's office last spring that our site plan review findings do not work. They
They're
were
too
too
strict.
strict. And so therefore, that's why we are supplementing in the decision and the final action with the template that the 3 points that the state put in their template bylaw.
So, but just know that from the original version that it's no longer going to refer to 9.4.12. And 9.4.12 is not going to be changed, that, if you looked at that separate sheet. So
Yeah.
there's a different set of conditions for MBTA district, which is per the state to not create roadblocks to the housing they're trying to create. So,
And then on 9A, if you're getting rid of mixed use, you might want to strike that part. of
Oh,
the
yeah.
sentence.
yep.
So there aren't really design standards here because they refer back, but we got rid of part of them. I guess I'm a little confused on that 9C1.
9C1. I'm not sure what's the comment?
So in here, when the MBTA overlay refers to design, it refers to our current,
Mm-hmm.
like, zoning. But now it says it's by the design standards of this section, which refers back, so.
Okay.
Do we have, I mean, I guess I would interpret that as like, oh, it didn't say anything about design standards, so I don't have to worry about it. I think it's not clear.
Okay.
This is the section that you said was boilerplate from the state?
Yes, but,
I understand your point.
yeah,
So
I
We
mean,
can say
our-
as noted, and obviously, and I think if we can, if we need to go back up top and add those performance standards and
Yeah.
those design criteria for each specific sub-district, then that would clarify the answer.
no, but we don't need to add those in here.
No.
All we need to do is, because it already says applicability, site plan review, 9.4, 9.6, 9.6 is design plan review, 9.4 is site plan review. So, so all we would have to say is the criterion design standards set forth in this section of the zoning bylaw, and the corresponding underlying zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or something.
we need that part, something.
It's a good add.
Tricia, sorry.
Yep.
Looks like I have a 911 for work, so I'm gonna have to have a cutoff at 9.
Yeah,
So is there anything that we need to sign on anything, or?
Oh, I'll go get it.
yeah, we'll get things you need to sign, and then, yeah, you can make your escape. Yeah, so basically, it's approval, and then approval with conditions, and then disapproval because of the reasons of an incomplete application. Now, I talked to Peter and Alvaro about that, like, what does that mean? And obviously, we were discussing that we assume it means that we'd interpret it to mean that an incomplete application, if say there's a thing in the bylaws that you have to have the lighting can't shine into buildings, right? And if you present a lighting plan where the light shines into buildings, it's incomplete because it says it's not supposed to shine into the buildings, right? So it would be an incomplete application because you didn't actually fulfill what we asked you to do. So, his incomplete application kind of sounds like you didn't put an address on or didn't give a phone number somewhere or whatever, right? So now, I mean,
Similar to the site plan review where we took off the mixed use, do we have to take off the mixed use from section 8A, the first line as well?
yes, thank you. Yep, thank you.
Control fund for mixed use.
Yeah, so mixed them in, we mixed them in and then didn't find them all to take them back out again. Yep. Yeah, 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 and even this, there's no,
Go back to lifeguarding, right?
all right, so we will go through, obviously, those changes. Hopefully tomorrow, if Alvaro has scheduled, you know, I don't know what's scheduled.
I hate to break it to everybody. It's Alvaro's 26th birthday tomorrow.
No way.
Alvaro is turning 26 and he's taking the day off.
Oh, wow, okay.
Renting a car, or is that 25?
Oh, well, good for Alvaro.
Alvaro is, but I will be here.
But these are pretty, in a way,
These are
pretty,
very simple.
except for going into the model, maybe, are very simple. So Monday latest, text tomorrow. Monday, you know, double check on the number crunching.
That was a good year.
Okay. All right, but does anyone have, and it's kind of, you can still kind of comment on it if something, you know, we need to wrap it up soon, because we'll need to post for the public hearing, which
Sure.
we'll need to,
Yeah, so just for clarification, we will not, because of these changes, we will probably re-advertise. And we will, we can meet on the 10th of October. Excuse me, yes, our next meeting is on 10th of October. But just to make sure that the changes are not rejected, the bylaw is not rejected due to the changes, in consistency with the posted bylaw that is out there right now, that was in the Metro West newspaper this past Wednesday, that I will repost the edited bylaw. I will also have to send this to all abutting towns, the state, and DHCD. And so then we will open the public hearing on the
24th.
the 24th of October.
So the first public hearing will be on the 24th of October.
And that will give us,
The second one, if we want to do it, is, because we don't need a second one, we thought maybe we could do on the 7th of November. Usually in November, we would meet on the 14th and the 28th, but we never meet on the 28th because it's Thanksgiving. So we thought maybe we would meet on the 7th. We usually switch it, so maybe we'd meet on the 7th instead, and that would give us still a 2-week break before town meeting. So same thing, we just, same amount of meetings, just switching one up further away from Thanksgiving, I guess. We don't have to have a second public hearing. It's really just to get to where during those public hearings, we need to vote on a zoning change. So if we do it in one meeting, we don't have to have the second one, but the second one could be good, obviously, just informationally or, you know.
So the advertisement is for the 10th, but now the 24th.
The 24th.
And then if there's another one, we continue it, or how is that? I'm just like,
I think if on the 24th, we're like the planning board, you know, and community response, and we're like, this is good, we got this. We can vote on it, we can vote to approve or disapprove,
you would
whatever.
vote to support
Vote to
as
support.
drafted, and then you would and then we have to go to town meeting. Then typically the planning board would make a report at town meeting like normal, and just say the planning board on such and such date voted to support, and we could add any other language that we would want to state.
But if on the 24th, we can either not vote and leave the public hearing open to the next date. We want to, of course, make sure we have it where we have enough of us to vote and make sure we get a chance to do this, otherwise we'll have to call another meeting. Or we can vote on it, but we can still have it as a forum on the next meeting, just to allow more explanation, more public discourse, more talking about it. We can't change it at that point anyway. We can only decide yes or no, right, if we're choosing to support it or not, so. But,
And then just to adds to another note, November and December are always the toughest meetings to post and/or meet. And so the question is, in December, does the planning board want to meet once on the 12th and then take a hiatus? And I don't want to skip over this, the MBTA stuff, but just from a scheduling standpoint, we should think about that. Fairly, we don't have to think about it tonight, but for the next meeting, we should just iron out where we want to meet in November and December.
Okay.
I jumped the gun, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to answer Kate's question. Okay, so that's all. I don't know, rather stupidly was thinking that maybe we wouldn't need a meeting, and then I realized that we really, really do. I don't know what I was thinking. But I would like to keep all the other stuff to a minimum. But I do think Kate maybe had a few comments she wanted to make on the document that she sent out. Unless it was just for our records, Kate, I don't know.
No, what I've been doing is just as I hear things, I've been adding them. Like I added tonight, I didn't know that our site plan review standards were not approved, so that will become 20 on the list, I think. Didn't you say that? That our current site plan review standards were not approved or something by the state?
No, our current site review standards, right? Site plan review standards
Yeah.
as held, the state, when determining if they could be applicable
To MBTA.
to the
Okay.
MBTA, found them to be too,
Okay, I get that, so.
for a lack of better terms, there were two, they could be seen, and you can kind of come to a consensus that
It's too restrictive.
they were too restrictive. So therefore, that's why we
They
were
were
going to.
different for that, okay.
They were different, and so that's why we're going to apply the states to MBTA to get over that hurdle.
But we're not going
We are
to,
not going to change
Our
our
own.
existing.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah.
did, okay.
Yeah.
So I would just want, I've been collecting, for instance, 19 got after the last meeting that there were projects changed, and I think we all said we probably should figure out a process for that. So I added that. So I hope to not just keep making a list, and I know we're not doing it tonight, but pick things that we think we want to put attention to. I did put, just updating for when we said town meeting, a couple of them we did say we sort of need to or want to, have to maybe, the floodplain, but maybe we can pick away at some other things.
sorry, can you say that again?
So
What
number
the-
9, I think that's helpful to the planning department, so I think we're targeting spring of ~25. The ADU, I think we said we want to, because if we're going to have some standards around ADU.
But number 9, do you mean meet with the design review committee? Is that what?
No, I'm sorry, I can't read, it's late at night.
Oh,
8.
okay. Sorry, that's why I was
And
confused.
then 18, I think Peter said probably should be on spring.
Yeah, I was actually on a call about that today.
Yeah,
Okay.
And so that's a sample bylaw. To tell you the truth, our bylaw dates back to 2014 in the floodplain overlay district. The town of Ashland sits in 2 different floodplains. It's in the Concord Sudbury, and then it's in the Charles River. This time, the Charles River flood boundary is going to be updated by bylaw since the last adoption, and so it makes sense to update our waterways.
Kate, why don't, just throwing this out there, why don't, after I get this bylaw straightened out with Peter, why don't you and I get together, maybe prior to our October 10th meeting, but maybe at the beginning of that week, or over the weekend, if maybe you and I can meet and try to rank these, or say 2025, or, to give some kind of structure to it, and then that'll be a takeoff point of discussion for October 10th, when we can more dig into these. I think some of them are obvious, and we could
Yes.
put that on it. And like I said, it would lessen the load. People can always disagree, but it would lessen the load for the 10th. Is that okay?
Yeah, and I think some of them, 3 or 4, Anna committed to doing some research, and she said, fine, if the board doesn't support it, but it'll move it forward by saying maybe yes, maybe no. So I
What
think-
else can we assign to Anna while she's not?
Yeah, exactly. Well, so I think my only ask, otherwise, I will be happy to keep doing this. I tried not to put something just in my head, but maybe at some point, I do have one more and I didn't, and we're not gonna talk about it tonight. But there's one thing, is there a way to put it on the agenda? Does anyone have other things they'd like to see? And secondly, at some point in the agenda, like, are we just gonna keep calling it this, or can we pull out things and like make some time? I think we are at the stage doing this, but I think hopefully we're gonna be like,
Yeah, I
Fine.
mean, I think some things are gonna like meet with water sewer department. Yep, let's put it on the
Yeah.
agenda for 2020, early in 2025, and,
yep,
you know, or even in December if we have a late
Yeah.
meeting, you know, that'd be a nice relaxing thing to talk about sewer.
okay, cool. No, that's kind of, I will keep doing it until it's not accomplishing anything, but I'm hoping it will accomplish
No, I
something.
think it's a good list. So, okay. So anything else in that regard? Go back to my agenda. So like I said, we will integrate the corrections and modifications with the bylaw and send that back out again. I would say end of the day, Monday latest.
Agreed.
Yeah. So to get Alvaro birthday boys spreadsheet stuff in there. So I was not looking to go through any of the reports tonight. I don't think anything has really changed. If there's anything that's actually, that's.
Nope, nothing's changed.
Okay.
The biggest thing I talked about is the November and December, so just get in your, what people's times are, and what they want to meet, they don't want to meet. We've had a lot of meetings, especially with Comp Plan, Kate and Anna, so if you guys want to slim down a meeting in December, for Old Saint Nick, I think it makes sense.
So but for the meetings, we'll meet October 24th. That'd be the public hearing.
Correct.
So the 10th is kind of open now. And then we were looking at doing 2 weeks later, because we have an extra Thursday in there, and maybe doing November 7th as the second public forum.
I'm going to be away on 10th and October 10th and November 7th.
Okay.
I'm traveling.
And Kate,
I'm traveling on 10th, but 7th I have another.
Okay, and it's usually, and it likely will be, it may just turn into, we could kind of see, it may just turn into a forum in a
Yep.
way, so, but we will keep that in mind.
How many, I can't vote on this only on site plan review for,
Special permits,
Yep.
yeah.
I was only reasoning because November 7th, I will almost definitely not be present.
Okay. I mean, we can keep it the 14th.
Maybe.
Yeah, we can keep it the 14th. I was just trying to back up from,
No,
You're
I
telling
think
me-
the 7th makes sense, don't schedule it based on me, I think I think I will be at the October 24th meeting, still barring a very early entrance, but November 7th is like, I will probably have.
so you were out the 10th,
Six-day
the
baby.
10th and,
October 10th, I'm traveling. 7th,
Okay.
I can call in from my event for the
Okay.
voting purpose, but
so if needed, you could call in.
yes.
Okay,
Will have very bad audio around me, but I can call in.
vote by text.
I can do that.
Okay.
I
Okay.
voted for Metro West Regional Collaborative from the bus stop this morning.
You
how was it?
It's great.
Okay.
Okay,
Can I have just a quick thing on the comprehensive plan?
yeah,
So, we're meeting yet again next week, but, early November, and I do not believe we have a date, there's going to be, they're calling technical review sessions, if you were at the presentation. And, we are expecting to want planning board reps, so what the general agreement is, like, we're representing the planning board, and all the boards should have a representative at these, but not the people on the comprehensive plan. So people will be reaching out for that. So hopefully we'll be able to staff that.
okay. And those
And
aren't-
then
Those will be
also-
on various nights, not just all at one time. is it?
No, yeah, I think, yeah, I don't.
Oh, yeah, they would be on
Assuming.
various nights. They would all be via Zoom.
Oh, okay.
And yes.
Okay.
And then we also, the last thing to say about that, we are looking for recommendations for people to, with the topic economic development, transportation, housing, historic, cultural. So reaching out broadly to the community, we don't want it to be the same people, et cetera. So if you have recommendations, I can add them to the list.
Can you send out the list of those
Topics.
topics so that then I can
So
think about it more?
I can, it's, so the state statute, but you might remember I asked Jen Goldson to put those lined up with the 5 core themes, so I can send that.
Yeah, I just figured having it a list on an email or,
Mhm.
something where I can then give it some thought.
So
So-
I can send that to Peter, send
Okay,
to the board.
okay.
So
Yeah, I actually, I have that. I sent that to
you have it, he made it, he was our scribe last
Michael.
time.
Yeah, I think Registry, I sent it to Michael Registry and Stacy, and they had it, and they were gonna add some things, and then
And-
they were gonna send it out.
And
so.
we're looking for people, not necessarily residents, but stakeholders, Ashland stakeholders, is that who we're looking for? Or could be regional or what?
It
or-
could be
Yes.
regional if it's an expert on the topic, or I probably don't pass over homegrown people. I mean, both. I think we're at the stage where it can be all of the above get evaluated by the committee.
Okay, okay.
To make, and, it's 20, but we can't just put 20 names because we don't even have a date to tell them, so we have to go over that, so I think,
Okay.
we're still kind of at the stage putting names, but I know your name got put on, so, doesn't mean you have to do it, but,
I hope I'm not an expert in planning or
You are.
bylaws. No.
yeah.
I don't feel like I am. So, okay,
Thank you.
sure. All right, anything else before we just go to the meeting minutes? I thought the meeting minutes were a little different this time. Weren't as, before they were very detailed, these seem much more simple, but Peter says it's the same person, which is fine, just, it was a different kind of meeting, I guess, partially. The one thing, I think, looks like Peter
I did
put
print
it
it out.
in the, oh, you printed out for everybody?
Yeah.
I feel
That's
like I
it.
just saw it and now I can't
That's
find it. Okay. For my comments, starting on line 95, this is where we're talking about about Kathy Rooney's reappointment. I found what was written as my statement pretty confusing, so Peter, I think, gave you a printout, right, gave everyone? Where I was dividing that paragraph, it's kind of a big paragraph, into 2 sections, one about my statement, which was kind of separate, and then one that starts Ms. Tesmaninsky, which is kind of not all Anna's statement, but something different. So I was just correcting, the top part, my statement, to try to have it be clear. So I didn't want to have to do it in the meeting because I thought that would be kind of hard. So I sent this to him in advance that it'd be easy to see. The only other thing I saw, Peter, was somewhere my name's misspelled.
Oh,
I have it.
is it-
I have it on my copy here.
can I see
Yeah.
that? Line 95,
Oh, this.
right?
Yeah, that's where the paragraph
Yep.
starts. Oh, here.
Oh,
At the-
125.
Yeah, 124.
What's the other
Hmm?
one? You had that, huh?
Oh, yeah, that's another one. Sorry.
Okay.
So I had that change in that paragraph, line 124, my name is misspelled. And then on line 141 and 142, it's about, I was just making clarifications on the MBTA. It says, Ms. Kendall created an MBTA zoning chart, which members received a copy of. Ms. Kendall reviewed the chart. 61 Waverly is listed as a risky option based on being 17. So it's just very specific. So instead, I've just put, Ms. Kendall reviewed the chart, including possible risks, instead of picking out one fact from the chart to review. Seemed kind of strange, so.
And clearly, we all love Miss Kendall, so there's a lot of Miss Kendalls on that sentence too.
There is that day. I apologize.
This meeting minutes on August 22nd, but your cover sheet has 24th, may not be, the agenda has 24th.
Oh, sorry, that's a typo.
Which one was right? The 22nd was right,
The
right?
22nd.
22nd is the
Okay.
right one.
That's mine. Nope,
Yeah,
the
the 22nd.
22nd, yeah, it was the 22nd, yep. 24th,
This is where my brain's at right now.
it's a Saturday.
I knew the 8th was the week before and added 14 and was like, that's 24.
I wish I had your reason, you know. Maybe I don't, actually. Never mind.
Should I make a motion?
If everyone's ready, I think.
I make a motion to approve the August 22nd, 2024 minutes with the specific addition that the chair submitted and the small items we addressed this evening.
Is there a second?
Second that.
And a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkatai.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
I don't remember, you don't usually vote for that, do you? Tricia Kendall, aye. So that's 3. So those are approved. Anything before, there's a motion to adjourn? Last chance. All right, then I will make a motion that we adjourn at 9:15. Is there a second?
Second that.
And a roll call vote?
Deepa Venkatai.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Amanda Hayes, aye.
And Tricia Kendall, aye. Thank you, everybody.